Howdy, hey everyone! And if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you would know that I'm obsessed with the Ultra Beasts. Make me a horrible, insane, controlling mother and call me Lucamine because I love these weird aliens, and definitely not because I have a ton of Pokemon corpses frozen in my basement. Jokes aside, I do think the Ultra Beasts are really cool. And while I do have a series of turning Ultra Beasts into regular Pokemon, I recently finished that, so I need something to scratch that itch. But then, I remembered a comment one of the videos had. According to the Ultra Sun Dex entry, Poipole is well liked enough to be chosen as a first partner in its own home world. That's it. Ultra Beast starters. This would be pretty hard, seeing that I've never actually designed an original Ultra Beast. Also, the typing. Poipole is a poison type, and Naganadel is a poison dragon type. Now, the astute among you may have noticed that is not fire, water, or grass, the normal starter types. Well, the latter can be resolved fairly easily. Even if it isn't perfect as the original, ground doesn't resist itself. Poison, ground, and grass is a pretty darn good type triangle, with poison beating grass, grass beating ground, and ground beating poison. And yes, grass is already a starter type, but does this look like the face of someone that really cares? As for the former problem, and yeah, that does create some problems. It's like what Nordis said in his Ultra Beast starter video. Starters are already hard to design. They're a player's first impression to a region, and usually the most Pokemon-looking Pokemon. Ultra Beasts, however, do not look like Pokemon, at all. So, how would you make them into starters? Well, you can combine things that starters have, big eyes, small head, small body, etc., and combine it with the weird body plan of the Ultra Beasts. So, let's start with the ground-type starter. Now, every Ultra Beast is based on some invasive species, as well as some sort of alien trope. They are interdimensional aliens, after all. We can get the invasive species part later, though, so let's start with the alien trope first. So, the most common form of aliens in media, at least one of the most common, is slime creatures. Icky, slimy, gross things. You know what else is icky, slimy, and gross? Mud. Then you start thinking, well, clay is pretty similar to mud. After all, both of them are just wet dirt. And what do you do with clay? Well, you can make all sorts of things, have stuff out of it. You know, that brings up another alien trope. Shape-shifting aliens. You know, the thing.
Among Us.
Infiltrating the humans and raising up their ranks. That one guy at the coffee shop, he could be an alien. And so I'm gonna make a little shape-shifting mud guy. And since it's the first stage, or the baby, if I may, I'll be able to fit in the idea of kids playing in the mud, making mud pies and the like. So I'll give it a bib-like pattern because, again, it's a baby. So, like always, I'm going to be starting off with blobby basic shapes. Blobby. Slime thing. I'm funny, I promise. Yeah, I'm giving it just basic slime things. I mentioned in a previous video that I really like things that just walk on their arms, and it also seemed a bit alien, so I did that. I give it these hair-like patterns that on its head that really are just like slime, just like the rest of its body. Its whole body is liquidy, viscous, moves around a lot, giving it like dirt-like colors, earthy colors, as well as a yellowish green for an alien feel. Here is UB Sludge, aka Mimud, a ground type from Mimic and Mud. Their body is made up entirely of a viscous flowing liquid, with the only solid part of their body being the horn on their head. They can change and morph their body into any shape. They prefer shade because if they stay in the sun for so long, they dry out and cannot move until rehydrated. Now to evolve it. This is going to be tricky. After all, how do you evolve mud? Just add more mud? Well, I guess. I'll give it a more defined body and less stubby limbs. Oh yeah, the invasive species. Well, it'll be based on the cane toad, an invasive and destructive toad introduced from Australia to Hawaii's ecosystem. Like this toad, Mimud's evolution is going to be brown and slimy, but you might think it isn't enough to warrant it being based on it. And to that I say, first of all, does this look like any specific animal? What about this one? But to make it a bit more obvious, I'll give it frog legs. But for a Pokemon evolution, even for Ultra Beasts, you don't just make them bigger, you have to evolve their concepts as well. And since Mimud is based on a mimic, oh yeah, it's based on a mimic too, forgot to mention that, it makes sense for it to evolve into a doppelganger, things that look like specific people, specifically loved ones, and often depicted as trying to take over the lives of the person that they're mimicking. However, that's just the folktale version. They do exist in real life though not as creepily today. Today, a doppelganger is someone who looks just like you, just not your twin. So it's a shape-shifting bit of mud pretending to be a person. Sounds a lot like the Swamp Man theory, which goes something like this. Let's say a man dies in a swamp, as they do. However, at the exact same moment, lightning strikes the swamp, rearranging the molecules in the muddy water to be exactly like the man, and transforms his personality, memories, into this Swamp Man. Is this Swamp Man the same person, or is it something else entirely? Well, I can't answer this because this isn't a philosophy channel. I make silly little guys. Again, I'm just starting by blocking out the basic proportions. Like I said, I'm giving it long, dangly frog legs and long arms that it walks on. Now, if you look closely, it has a second pair of arms with 2 fingers on it, so there's that too. Since it's a doppelganger, I'd imagine it'd be panicked and paranoid about being found out, so I gave it this crazed expression, giving it Mimud's colors, as well as some little crumbs? Sure, we'll call them crumbs, down at the bottom. Overlapping layers make it look thicker, and adding some shading here is You Be Malleable, aka Droppelgangled, from Drip Drop, something that its liquidy body does frequently, Doppelganger, and Mold, as in molding something together, a darkened ground type. Due to the liquid nature of their bodies, their organs do not stay in the same place for long. Masters of disguise, they can change their shape and color to anything they please, but prefer living creatures. If a loved one begins to stop eating, gaze into the distance more often, and have a wild look in their eyes, it is already too late. Alright, cool. Now that the ground type starter is done, let's move on to the grass type one. For this starter, I already knew what the main inspiration should be: carnivorous plants. Despite still existing on Earth, the idea of plants that consume flesh seems so alien. I mean, plants are supposed to absorb sunlight, not eat meat. The reason behind many plants being carnivorous is because they live in low nitrogen soil, so to get said nitrogen, they consume things like flies, spiders, and other insects. But I don't have a PhD in biology, so don't quote me on that. But I don't want to base it on the Venus flytrap, firstly because Carnivine exists, and secondly, that just seems a bit basic and boring. Instead, I'll base it off of one with a bit more visual flair: the sundew. These plants secrete a substance that looks like a fiery red dewdrop, hence their name. These dewdrops are very sweet smelling, at least to bugs, incredibly sticky, and how it eats. The bugs are attracted to the dewdrops because of the smell, get stuck, and the tendrils close in, digesting the bugs alive. Oh yeah, they're also corrosive. Don't fact check me on that either. And if I do say so myself, they seem kind of like octopus tentacles. Long, squiggly tendrils that grab onto things with the sticky circular bits. This introduces us to the secondary inspiration: the many types of invasive octopi, but also the tree octopus hoax, bringing in the grass type back, as well as the literal Australian octopus tree, another Hawaiian invasive species. And for the alien bit, well, first of all, octopus genes are so far away from other intelligent species, you could call them aliens for just that, but also octopus and octopus-adjacent aliens are fairly common, at least aliens with tentacles. So are giant man-eating plants, trying it back to the sundew. It's all just too perfect. So I'm starting it off with a big head and a big cone-like, almost like pitcher plant-esque, I don't know, neck thing? I don't know. Big head and big bulbous eyes. It has a tentacle wrapped around a seed that it's hollowed out and lives in now. And it also kind of looks like a UFO, kind of. If you squint and tilt your head a bit, I don't know. It stands on its little tentacle feet, giving it grassy colors, but also the sundew's iconic red dewdrops. So, here is UB Digestion, aka Sea-Dew, from seed in sundew, a grass type. Their eggs are planted within seeds and grow up living inside it, drawing nutrients as both Sea-Dew and the seed grow up. The droplets are very sticky and hunts by waiting for prey to land on the sweet-smelling drops, only for them to get stuck and slowly eaten alive. And finally, Sea-Dew's evolution. Like Mimad into Droppelgangold, I wanted the concept to evolve with the Pokemon. Well, I guess Sea-Dew is kind of like a toddler, eating anything it can get its grubby little tentacle mitts on. However, like a real person, its tastes also evolve. Now, instead of any old meat, it consumes blood. Oh yeah, it's a vampire now. Remember the pitcher plant-looking cone-shaped thing around Sea-Dew's head? That's going to expand out and become a long cape for a distinguished gentleman, such as Dracula. Oh, and remember how Sea-Dew was partially based on the tree octopus hoax? Well, here it turns that hoax into a full-on conspiracy, with its ever-patient and quiet demeanor. It will never share its secrets, while also gaining information from everyone else with its many eyes. Oh yeah, those drops are its eyes, another alien trope, weird anatomy. It'll have even more eyes and stand up straight, like a true gentleman. And its many all-seeing eyes will also reference dystopian novels such as Fahrenheit 451, The Giver, and especially 1984. You know, Big Brother is always watching. You could also say that it references its vampire inspiration, saying that the government drains and exhausts people, but I don't want to get too political or conspiracy theory-y, so I'll just stop there. Also, forgot to mention this, but it having a lot of eyes is just like starfish, which are octopi. Once again, blocking out the main proportions. It's gonna have 8 tentacles, just like an octopus, but they're gonna be spread out like its arms, but also kind of like how a sundew sprawls out its arms. The red drops are, of course, like I mentioned, its many eyes, and yeah, it stands up just like a gentleman. Now, if you look closely, you might see that I'm doing like some weird overlap stuff with the red drops, the eyes, sorry. But that's intentional because I don't feel like outlining all of them on the same layer as the rest of it. So, yeah, giving it Sea-Dew's colors, the seed, the red drops. Here's UB Vision, aka Cytalaseed, from Sight, Seed, and Cephalopod, another name for an octopus or squid, a grass psychic type. Incredibly patient and intelligent, they wait for weeks or months for prey to fly into one of their many eyes. They can live in many different environments, but their favorites are trees. The many eyes also make it impossible to sneak up on them. They are always watching. And that's it for today. Do you think these 3 work as a trio? What about their evolutions? And all canon starters, starting especially in Gen 4, share a common theme. Gen 4 starters are based on mythology, with the world turtles, Poseidon, and Sin Wukong. Gen 5 starters are based on world empires, with the French, Chinese, and Japanese empires. And finally, the Gen 6 starters are based on RPG classes, with the Knight, the Mage, and the Rogue, and etc. So, these Ultra Beast starters, our common theme is stickiness. Poipole is literally UB adhesive, and their head is filled with glue. Mimud is made up of a sticky slime, and Sea-Doo has super sticky eyes. Wow, that is a weird sentence, isn't it? Also, another thing that ties them all together is the color of their eyes. Their primary colors. Poipole has blue eyes, Mimud has yellow eyes, and Sea-Doo has red. These are some of the best and well thought out designs I've made so far, so I hope you enjoyed them. And with that, see ya, and stay safe.